The alien slave market on planet Vorthax was loud, full of shouting, bright lights, and cruel laughter. Buyers from many species walked around, waving credit chips, picking and rejecting slaves like broken toys. But in the far back corner, where the lights flickered and the floor smelled like rust, stood a girl no one looked at. She was tall, thin, her skin a soft shade of lavender, her eyes clouded white with blindness. Her silver hair fell across her face like a curtain, and her hands were gently chained in front of her. She didn't cry, didn't speak, didn't even flinch. She just stood there, quietly, as if waiting for something or someone. The auctioneer was getting impatient. "This one here," he shouted half-heartedly, tapping the collar on the blind girl's neck. "Royal blood. They say, but can't see, can't fight, can't clean. Half price." "No." "All right, moving on." The crowd laughed, not even sparing her a glance. "Waste of space," one green-scaled merchant muttered. "Why is she even here?" Hissed another alien with 6 eyes. She heard it all, every word, every whisper, but she stayed silent, inside. Her heart was tired. She had once been a princess, a real one, on the shining world of Eltia. But then came war, betrayal, and fire. Her people lost. Her vision gone in an explosion. Her title stripped, her name erased. Now, she was nothing more than a number on a slave tag. The auction continued. Buyers cheering for strong warriors, rare dancers, and exotic beasts. But the girl was forgotten in the shadows. Until he walked in, the human man looked out of place. He wore a long brown coat, torn at the sleeves, and dust covered his boots. His hair was messy, and a scar ran down the side of his cheek. He didn't carry weapons or guards, just a calm look in his eyes. He walked through the market, ignoring the crowd. His steps were quiet, but his presence strong. And then he stopped right in front of her. The girl didn't move, but her head slightly tilted. She could feel someone was there. Different, quiet, warm. The human looked at the auctioneer. "This one," he said softly. "How much?" The auctioneer blinked, confused. "This one? You want her? She's blind, defective, and probably cursed." "I said how much?" The human repeated, his voice firm, but not angry. There was silence for a moment. Then the auctioneer laughed awkwardly and shrugged. "Fine, take her. Just give me 20 credits and get out before I change my mind." The human nodded, dropped the chips on the crate, and stepped forward. He reached out, gently touching her wrist. Her skin flinched, not in fear, but in shock. Nobody had touched her kindly in a very long time. "Come," the human whispered. "You're safe now." She didn't move, not right away. "Why?" She finally spoke, her voice soft, dry like dust. "Why would you choose me?" He didn't give a long answer. He just said, "Because I saw what others couldn't." And then, for the first time since she was captured, the blind princess took a step forward, guided by the warmth of a stranger's hand. The crowd didn't cheer, didn't notice. But something powerful had just begun. Not a rescue, not a mission, but a bond between the forgotten and the fearless. They walked away from the noise, one step at a time, a blind alien girl and a quiet human man, in a galaxy that had already decided she was worthless. He had decided she was someone, and in her silent heart, something flickered. Not hope, not yet, but maybe. The beginning of it? The small ship hummed gently as it flew through the quiet stars. Inside the passenger bay, the blind alien girl sat on a soft bench, wrapped in a clean blanket. She could no longer see the stars, but she remembered them bright, endless, dancing across her childhood sky. Now her world was only sound, smell, and the gentle vibrations under her feet. The human man had not spoken much since they left the market. He flew the ship quietly, adjusting controls and checking readings. but she could feel him nearby. There was no anger in him, no greed, no lies in his voice that confused her more than anything. "Do you have a name?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned his head slightly. "Call me Jack," he said. "And you?" The girl hesitated. "My name was Alira," she said, almost ashamed. "Princess Alira of Elthea." She waited, expecting him to laugh or question her sanity. But he didn't. Jack just nodded. "All right, Alira, you're safe now." Safe. That word felt strange on her tongue, like something she wasn't allowed to say. They landed on a quiet moon, be-souled, forgotten, but safe. Jack led her inside, his hand always just an inch from hers. Guiding her gently, he never pulled. Never. Force just offered his presence. The room smelled of metal and old fuel, but the bed was warm. And the food, though simple, filled her empty stomach. That night, Alira didn't sleep. She sat near the vent, feeling the air move, and the memories came back. She remembered the palace garden, the way the stars used to shine above her favorite tree. She remembered her little brother chasing fireflies, and her mother's voice singing in Elthian tongue. Then, the fire, the screaming, the explosion that took her sight, the chains, and the long, cold silence of space prisons. Alira touched her own face, her fingers trembling. She no longer knew what she looked like. Was her hair still silver? Did her eyes look frightening now? Did anyone even remember her name? Morning came softly, and Jack returned with a small box. "What's that?" she asked. "It's a haptic reader," he said. "It lets you feel shapes with your hands." He placed it in front of her. Inside were small model stars, animals. Even letters from human language raised so she could feel them, hear. He took her hand and guided it to a star-shaped pointed edges. "That's a human star," he said. Smiling, she smiled too. Her fingers exploring it slowly. "It feels sharp," she said. He chuckled. "They usually are, for the next few hours." She learned she touched the model of a flower, a bird, a house. He described each one, patiently, kindly. When she reached the model of a tree, she stopped. "This one," she whispered. "This one reminds me of home." Her face changed, a soft ache appearing in her voice. Jack noticed, but didn't push. He just sat beside her in silence. Later that day, she heard him fixing something outside. Metal tools clinked, and a small fire sparked. Alira moved carefully, feeling her way toward the door. When she stepped outside, she froze. The wind brushed against her face, warm and gentle, and even without her eyes, she felt something strange. Peace. She turned her head toward the sound of Jack hammering. "You don't talk much," she said softly. He stopped, wiping his hands. "I don't like wasting words," he replied. She smiled faintly. "You already gave me more words than anyone else has in years." He didn't reply, but she could feel his presence again, steady, respectful. Not once had he treated her like a slave, a burden, or a mistake. That night, she sat on the bed, holding the star-shaped model in her hand. She turned it over and over. Finally, she whispered into the quiet room, "Why me, Jack? Out of all the slaves, why did you choose me?" Jack stood at the doorway for a moment before answering. I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe because you looked like you still had something to fight for." She swallowed hard. "Even if I can't see." He walked over and gently took the star from her hand. "You still see more than most people ever will," he said. And with that, he placed the star back in her hand and turned off the light. Even though her world was already dark, something inside her had begun to glow again. Not sight, but purpose. The blind alien princess, Alira, woke up to the soft sounds of metal being welded. She could feel the soft vibration in the floor, the humming of tools, and the occasional sound of Jack muttering under his breath. Even though she couldn't see, she had learned to sense everything else, every shift in the air. Every step he took, every pause in his breath. She sat up slowly, wrapping the blanket. Around her shoulders, the small base Jack had brought her to was quiet and peaceful. Far away from the cruelty of the auction pits, but it was more than that. It was becoming familiar. And Alira had not felt familiar in a very long time. Jack entered with a tray in his hands, hot grain porridge, and something that smells like fruit. He said he placed it in her hands gently. Guiding her fingers to the bowl, "I warmed the spoon for your hands." He added. Alira gave a small, surprised smile. "You think of everything," she said, carefully taking a bite. Jack just shrugged. "You learn these things when you live alone long enough." After breakfast, Jack brought out something new, a square board with raised lines and dots. "This is a tactile map," he said. "Helps you understand the layout of the base." He placed her fingers on it, guiding them slowly. "This is your room," he said. "Here's the kitchen. And this line leads to the garden dome." She paused at that word, garden. Jack nodded. "It's nothing royal, but I've grown a few things." "Want to see it?" Alira smiled gently. "I can't see, but you can feel," he replied, holding out his hand. "And smell." They walked slowly, her hand resting on his arm. When they reached the dome, a soft, sweet scent hit her. Nose flowers, wet soil, fresh air. She let go of his arm and crouched near the garden bed. Her fingers touched soft petals, rough leaves, and warm soil. "This one is called lavender," Jack said. "Like my skin," she smiled, running her fingers along the stem. "And this, sunroot. It glows in the dark," he said. "I used to talk to it when I had no one else." That made her laugh softly, and Jack's chest tightened at the sound. It had been quiet laughter, unsure, but real, like a small light in a long hallway. They spent hours there, Jack describing colors, textures, and smells. Alira memorized everything, creating pictures in her mind. He told her that blue was calm, like cold water, that red felt like anger or passion, like fire or blood, that green was peaceful, like safety or life. She touched his hand and asked, "What color are you?" Jack blinked, caught off guard. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe gray, like old things. Worn, but still here." She smiled again. "Then gray is a good color." Days passed, and Alira learned more. She practiced walking alone, using the map in her mind and her memory. She learned how to tell time by the hum of the generator, and even started preparing meals with Jack close by, always ready in case she dropped something. One evening, Jack found her near the console. She was running her fingers along the control panel, trying to understand it. He didn't stop her. Instead, he stood beside her and placed her hand on the correct button. "This is the come switch," he said. "This sends signals." She asked, "Yeah, but don't worry, it's off." Her hand paused. "What if someone is looking for me?" She asked quietly. "Someone dangerous?" Jack looked at her, and for a moment, he didn't answer. Then he said, "Let them come." "I won't let them take you." Alira turned her face toward his voice. "How can you be so sure?" "'Cause I've got nothing to lose. But now I have you," he said. Honestly, she reached out, touched his face slowly, her fingers running over the scar on his cheek. "You're brave," she said. "No," he whispered. "I'm just tired of letting the galaxy decide who matters." Silence filled the room, but it wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken feelings. Things too big for words. Later that night, Alira sat by the garden again. She held a small flower in her palm. She remembered being a princess, walking among golden towers and shining halls. But now she remembered something deeper: being seen, being helped, being touched kindly, and even if she never saw the stars again, she knew this human had brought them back into her heart. A soft breeze passed through the vents of the small outpost. It was peaceful, warm, and quiet just the way Jack liked it, but the silence didn't last. That evening, the wind changed. The air grew colder, sharp, filled with static. Storms on this moon didn't come often, but when they did, they came fast and fierce. Illyra sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers tracing the wooden flower Jack had carved for her. She had grown used to the quiet, but the shift in the air made her shoulders tense. She tilted her head. Sensing something outside, something wild, Jack entered quickly, brushing dust off his coat. "There's a storm coming," he said, walking to the control panel. "How bad?" She asked. He didn't answer right away, which told her everything. "Bad enough," he said finally. "We'll lose power soon." "I'm locking down everything." She nodded, her hands curling around the wooden flower. Jack moved fast, sealing the outer doors. Reinforcing the dome glass with emergency shutters, Illyra followed the sounds. The hissing of hydraulic locks, the hum of backup lights turning on but deep in her chest. She felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Fear. A loud boom shook. The floor, not thunder, it was something else, something deeper. Her hands gripped the bed frame, her breath quickening. She was back there again on Althea, the fire. The collapsing towers, the deafening explosions that stole her sight. She stood quickly and stumbled toward the hallway. Jack caught her just in time. "Hey, easy," he said. "It's just a storm." "No," she said, her voice trembling. "Not just. I remember this. I remember the sound of falling walls." Jack held her close, one arm around her shoulders. "Breathe, Illyra," he said gently. "You're not there anymore. You're here. With me." She leaned into him, her body shaking. He didn't speak. More heat stayed with her until the rumbling calmed a little later that night. The power flickered and finally died. Only the emergency glow rods lit the room with faint blue light. Illyra sat curled up, clutching the flower. Jack sat nearby, quiet, watching her with worried eyes. To distract her, he opened a metal box and pulled out a music player. Old human tunes began to play. Soft and slow, she tilted her head, surprised by the sound. "It's beautiful," she said. Jack smiled. "It was my sister's favorite." She said it made her feel like floating. Illyra relaxed a little, the music calming her nerves. But as Jack stood up to check the systems again, something fell from his coat. A datapad. She heard the sound like metal hitting floor. She bent down slowly and picked it up. Her fingers brushed over the screen, and by accident, she activated a voice menu. Robotic voice spoke. "Royal Registry Althean Bloodline Document Subject. Princess Illyra of Althea." She froze. Her fingers tightened around the device. He knew he had known the whole time. Jack turned around, realizing what had happened. "I was going to tell you," he said quickly, stepping closer. "Since when?" she asked, her voice suddenly cold. "Since before I bought you," he admitted. "There was a rumor. I checked. I had to be sure you knew who I was," she whispered, "and you said nothing. Why?" Jack sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Because I didn't want to treat you like a princess," he said. "I wanted to treat you like a person." Illyra stood up slowly, her face full of hurt. "All this time, I thought someone finally saw me, not the royal name, not the curse, just me. I did." Jack said, stepping closer. "I still do." She shook her head, stepping back. "I trusted you," she whispered. "But now I don't know if you saved me, or just rescued a trophy." She turned and walked toward the door. Jack reached out, but stopped himself. "Where will you go?" he asked softly. "I don't know," she said, her voice shaking, "but I need to be somewhere where I'm not." A secret. The storm outside had passed, but inside the room, a different storm remained quiet. Personal, painful. As the door closed behind her, Jack stood alone. He looked down at the datapad, then at the empty space where she had just stood. And for the first time in many years, he felt afraid not of war, not of storms, but of losing something he never expected to find, a connection. The moon was quiet again, but the silence was cold. Illyra sat outside the shelter. On the edge of a low hill, she could feel the ground still damp from the storm. Her fingers rested on the soil, as if trying to feel her place in the universe again. She didn't cry, but she was hurt deeply. The man who had rescued her had known who she was all along. Even though he treated her kindly, it now felt like a lie. She felt lost. All over again behind her, the old outpost flickered with weak emergency lights. Jack hadn't come after her. She wasn't sure if that made it better or worse. Far above them, in the dark sky, something moved. A small ship, quiet, sharp, and fast. It didn't land with noise, but with silence, like a shadow slipping into. A room inside the ship was a creature with gray skin and bright green eyes. His armor was black and scratched, his weapon clean and deadly. A bounty hunter, his target, the missing Elthian princess. Jack was the first to notice the alert. The sensors, weak from the storm, still picked up the energy signal. He didn't panic. He simply grabbed his old rifle, checked the charge, and locked the main door. He didn't need to guess who it was. Only a bounty hunter would come this quiet, and only one kind of bounty would bring them here. He cursed under his breath. Illyra was still outside, alone. He opened the back exit and ran out. The air was still, but his heart pounded loud. He followed the path they used to walk to the garden dome, then to the ridge. Illyra heard the footsteps before she heard his voice. Illyra. Jack called out, breathing hard, "Come inside." Now. She turned her head slowly, confused. "Why?" "There's someone here," he said, grabbing her arm. "Someone dangerous." She didn't resist this time. She could feel the tension. In his grip, something serious was happening. But before they could reach the shelter, a voice echoed across the rocks. Well, isn't this touching?" Jack turned, pulling Illyra behind him. A tall figure stepped forward from the shadows, his armor glowing slightly in the dark. He held a plasma spear lazily in one hand. "Give me the girl," he said, "and I'll let you crawl away alive." Jack raised his rifle. "You're not taking her," he said firmly. The bounty hunter laughed. "Human, you can barely stand between two worlds. What makes you think you can protect a princess?" "She's not your target anymore," Jack said. "She's not property." The bounty hunter's smile faded. He moved fast, too fast, charging toward them. Jack fired, hitting him in the shoulder. But the hunter didn't slow down. The fight was brutal. Jack dodged, blocked, and fought with all his strength. But the hunter was trained, deadly, and larger. Illyra stood, frozen, hearing the fight, the grunts, the punches, the crash of bodies. She couldn't see, but she could feel everything. The wind shifting, the crack of Jack's gun falling, the sharp intake of breath when Jack hit the ground. And then silence. Illyra moved, slowly, carefully, using sound and memory. She reached the clearing where the fight had ended. Jack lay on the ground, breathing heavily, blood on his forehead. The bounty hunter stood over him, laughing. "Was that it? You risked your life for a blind, broken princess." Illyra stepped forward, her voice calm but shaking. "She's not broken." The hunter turned, surprised. Illyra kept walking until she stood between him and Jack. She couldn't see the weapon pointed at her, but she could hear the hum, feel the danger. "You want me?" she said. "Then take me, but leave him." The bounty hunter hesitated. "You're not worth anything dead," he said. "Then I'm not going anywhere," she replied, "because without him, I'm already dead." Her voice cracked slightly, but she stood tall, even in her blindness, even in her fear. Behind her, Jack groaned, trying to get up. "No," Illyra whispered. "Stay down. Please." The bounty hunter tilted his head. Amused, "You've changed, princess," he said. Royalty didn't used to beg. "I'm not begging," she whispered. "I'm choosing." And with that, she stepped closer to the hunter. Her hands open, he didn't move, curious what she was doing. She reached forward and touched his face, then grabbed his visor and yanked it off. Revealing his sensitive eyes, the hunter screamed, blinded for a moment. Jack didn't waste it. He pulled a small stun blade from his belt and stabbed the hunter's leg. The alien collapsed, howling. Jack grabbed Illyra and pulled her back, his arm shaking. The hunter lay groaning in pain, not unconscious, but defeated. "You're not worth the credits," he spat, limping back toward his ship. "You've already lost yourself," as the hunter ship disappeared into the sky. Silence returned. Illyra knelt beside Jack, feeling his blood on her hands. "Why? Did you come back for me?" she whispered. Jack smiled through the pain. "Because you're not just a princess. You're my friend." Jack lay half-conscious on the cold ground. Blood dripped slowly from a cut above his eyebrow, and his side burned with pain. The bounty hunter's ship had vanished into the dark sky. But the danger wasn't truly gone. Illyra knelt beside him, her hands trembling as they touched his chest. "Jack, stay with me," she whispered. "Please, don't close your eyes." He let out a weak chuckle, his voice barely a breath. "Not planning to. Not until I see what kind of mess we've made." But she could hear the pain in his words, the shortness of breath. He was badly hurt, maybe dying, and she was the only one who could help. The blind alien princess who once thought she was useless now had to become his only hope. She took a deep breath and listened. The wind was quiet, the ground still warm. She remembered the way back to the outposts, step by step, corner by corner. Jack had guided her through it so many times. Now it was her turn to lead. She slid her arm under his shoulders. "I'm going to move you," she said softly. "It will hurt." "Everything hurts," he muttered. "Might as well add to the collection." She pulled him slowly, carefully, inch by inch. Her muscles screamed in protest, but she didn't stop. One hand always reached forward to feel the ground, the wall, the next step. The other never let go of him. They reached the edge of the outpost. She opened the door with the panel Jack once taught her to feel. 3 buttons, soft to the left, hard press in the center. Then swipe right. It beeped once and opened. Inside. She laid him gently on the nearest table. The lights flickered above, weak but working. She stumbled to the medkit. She knew it was on the second shelf, behind the tools. Her fingers fumbled through metal and plastic until she found the right shape. She opened it, shaking, and found the injector. She had no idea what the medicine did, but it smelled sharp like Jack's old bandages. That had to be good, right? She pressed it against his arm and released the dose. Jack let out a groan, but his breathing steadied a little. "You're doing good," he whispered. "Better than I could with no eyes." Illyra smiled weakly. "Don't flatter me yet. You still look like death." Jack coughed a soft laugh. "Sounds about right." She held his hand and sat beside him. "I was afraid," she admitted, "out there, in the dark. I couldn't see him, but I could feel his hate, his hunger, his anger." Jack turned his head slightly, his voice gentle and yet. "You stood in front of him." She nodded. "I thought I'd freeze. I thought I'd fall apart. I didn't. You didn't." He whispered, "You saved us both." For hours, she stayed at his side, listening to the heartbeat monitor beep slowly. She didn't move, not even when her legs fell numb. Because she knew if the beeping ever stopped, she'd lose the only person who had truly seen her. Later, when Jack fell into a deep sleep, Illyra stood up and walked to the cum station. She touched the controls, remembering what Jack told her. 1 button to activate, one to record, one to send. She pressed them all. Her voice was calm, but firm. "This is Illyra of Altea," she said. "Not a slave. Not a prize. Not a forgotten thing. If anyone still remembers the House of Light, know this. I'm alive, and I'm not hiding, but I'm not coming back to a throne. I've found something greater, a place where I matter not because of my blood, but because someone gave me a chance to live again." She ended the message and shut off the signal. She didn't care who heard it. Let them come, let them search. She was not afraid anymore. Hours passed. Jack woke up again, pale but smiling. "You're still here," he said, voice rough. "I'm not leaving," she replied, gently placing a cool cloth on his head. "Good," he said. "Because you're the bravest person I've ever met." She touched his hand, slowly guiding it to her face. Then, "Feel me," she whispered. "Feel the person you helped me become." Jack did, and in that moment, the room was brighter than any sun. Not because of lights or stars, but because a blind girl had walked through fear. And days passed slowly, but peacefully. Jack's wounds began to heal, though the bruises on his ribs still made him wince. Illyra never left his side, not once. She brought him food, water, even told him stories from her childhood, stories she hadn't spoken aloud in years. "You know," Jack said one evening, lying in bed with his hand resting over his bandaged ribs, "you never needed eyes to see what really matters." Illyra smiled at his words, sitting beside him with her hand wrapped around a warm mug. "I used to think my blindness was the reason no one wanted me," she said softly, "that no one could ever see me as more than a broken royal." "But you never saw yourself that way," Jack replied. "Not truly." She stayed quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right," she said. "Not anymore." She stood up and walked toward the old workbench where she'd hidden something. Her fingers brushed against cold metal until she found the small, round device Jack had once repaired, a vision stimulator. "This," she said. "You built this for me, didn't you?" Jack turned his head, surprised. "I started fixing it months ago," he said. "Was going to show it to you when it was safe. But you beat me to it." Illyra carefully pressed the button on the side, and the device began to hum. Tiny threads of nanotech stretched along her temples and cheekbones. A soft beep echoed. And for the first time since the palace explosion, light returned. Not full sight, just shapes. Outlines, blurred colors, like fog over a dream. But it was enough to make her gasp. She blinked again and again, her hands shaking. I can see shadows," she whispered, tears forming in her glowing eyes. Jack smiled wide. "Pain forgotten. That's more than I ever hoped for," he said. She turned to him, eyes still cloudy but lit with life. "I still want to live in the dark," she said quietly. "But now, I choose it." A few days later, the COM panel beeped. Jack checked it and raised an eyebrow. "You're going to want to hear this," he said. Illyra walked over slowly, still adjusting to the blurry world. The message played to the one who calls herself Illyra of Altea. "If your words are true, and you are alive, then you must return, at once, to your people." Illyra frowned. Her old council was calling her back not because they missed her, but because they needed a symbol to control. A name to wear like a crown, not a person, not her. "I'm not going," she said simply. Jack didn't question it. "You sure?" he asked anyway. "I'm not their tool," she replied. "I'm not their blind princess anymore." Later that evening, Illyra asked Jack to walk with her to the garden dome. She used her memory more than her new shadow vision, still trusting her senses, there, under the glowing sunroot flowers. She took his hand. "I want to stay," she said softly. "Here. With you?" Jack blinked. "Are you sure?" "I mean, we've got nothing. No money, no future, just old machines and weird plants." She laughed, a sound Jack had grown to love. That's more than I ever had before, she said. And I don't need a palace Sci, need someone who believes. In me, he squeezed her hand gently. Then stay, he whispered. This place is home now. Because you're in it, in the following weeks, they worked together. They planted new crops in the garden, rebuilt the solar panels, and even built a new section to the outpost for guests should anyone ever visit. Eliar became the heart of the place. She cooked, repaired, explored with her fingers, her ears, her new vision, and her courage. And Jack. He stood by her side, proud of the woman she had become. Not a princess, not a prisoner, but a survivor, a fighter, a friend. One day, as they stood outside watching the sky together, Illyra turned to him. I used to wish someone would come. Save me, she said. Jack looked at her, waiting, but now I know I didn't need someone to save me. I needed someone to stand with me, and I'm not going anywhere, he said, smiling. Not as long as you'll let me stay. She leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. I don't need perfect sight, she whispered, because you helped me see everything that matters, and under that starlit sky, with the soft hum of wind and blooming alien flowers around them, the blind princess finally saw what no vision could ever show, the beauty of being truly known, and the love of a human who had seen her from the very beginning.